Party. Pelosi's moved radically to the left even over the course of the last 18 months.
Ben Shapiro was on television on, is this Fox? Not even Fox News. Another television station. Ben Shapiro was on television talking about how Nancy Pelosi has moved to the radical left. You heard it here first, folks. Nancy Pelosi, radical leftist. Let's check out these clips of... let's watch, and then I will react.
It's becoming increasingly clear that once you have that fire, the fire is going to eat everything. And that's why you're seeing people like William Lacey Clay ousted in his own congressional race. It's why you saw Elliot Engel ousted in his congressional race. It's why you're seeing the radical left primarying people, the Justice Democrats primarying people and winning. It's why when President Trump suggests that Joe Biden is going to be a vehicle for the radical left, he's right. I mean, I don't see Biden as providing any sort of serious obstacle to the radical left if the radical left really starts to push. You saw this with Nancy Pelosi, too. Last year, there was that bit of a dust-up between Pelosi and the squad, and that immediately was curtailed, and the squad basically took control of a lot of the agenda items in the Democratic Party. Pelosi's moved radically to the left even over the course of the last 18 months. I think that there's going to be a liberal reaction to the radical left, and you're starting to see that build. I mean, that Harper's Weekly open letter with 158 people on the sort of moderate left saying that cancel culture is bad. That was highly controversial in Democratic circles. More and more, I'm seeing people who are sort of normal, run-of-the-mill liberals who may disagree about tax rates or about the role of the government in medical care, starting to recognize that the radical left is deeply dangerous. My hope is that that will provide the basis for some sort of new coalition, or even if we don't all agree on some of those basic matters, we certainly all agree that cancel culture is a bad thing. And now you've seen, just in the last couple of months, a couple of long-time Democratic Congress people. I mentioned Elliot Engel in New York and William Lacey Clay in Missouri. William Lacey Clay is a 20-year veteran of Congress. His father was one of the founders of the Congressional Black Caucus. He's part of a political dynasty over there. And he was ousted by the Justice Democrat. Rashida Tlaib just won her re-elect effort in her primary, so did Ilhan Omar. So the kind of threat from the moderates to the radicals obviously is not serious at this point.
All right. Man. Notice how he never actually brings up any points to back up what he's saying. So he claims Nancy Pelosi has moved radically to the left. He just puts that out there. Doesn't say how. Doesn't say in what way. I mean, Nancy Pelosi shut down the paycheck protection that Pramila Jayapal, who isn't even a socialist, but, you know, sure, more left in the party. She's a great congressperson. Jayapal brought up the paycheck protection so that Americans would have some more financial assistance. Pelosi shot that down. A universal basic income that pretty much every other country has during this pandemic. Pelosi shot that down. Wasn't even a discussion. Yet somehow Medicare for all never gets a vote, never gets a discussion, nothing. In what way has Nancy Pelosi moved to the radical left? And it's also funny, by the way, to point out what's radical to Ben Shapiro. Guaranteeing health care to people during a pandemic so that, you know, if you get sick, you don't die because you're poor. And even just separate from the pandemic, how about you just get cancer? Ben Shapiro thinks guaranteeing health care is radical, even though, again, many other countries have health care guaranteed. But that's radical for Ben Shapiro. While billionaires are increasing their wealth, it's radical to guarantee people health care as a human right. Radical is a living wage. Living wage is radical. It's radical to think that if people work 40 hours a week, they should be able to actually afford rent and food. That's radical for Ben Shapiro. Not starting wars. Radical position. It's very radical to value human life. Can't value all human life is not the same. Americans are more important than everybody else in the world. Not starting wars is a very radical position for Ben Shapiro. Just, it really comes down to general compassion and human decency. For Ben Shapiro, that's radical. There was a recent video I covered. Ben Shapiro said that empathy does not belong in politics. That gives you an idea of what motivates him. If you're not motivated by empathy, then you're a sociopath. So having politicians that are sociopaths, that makes more sense to you than having people actually represent the interests of the average individual? But no, that's radical. It's radical to have these campaigns like Cori Bush that he mentioned, like Jamal Bowman, like AOC. It's radical to have campaigns that are funded by average individuals as opposed to corporations who then go in and control these politicians when they're in Congress. It's radical to actually be represented by the people. And then he goes into cancel culture. Now, look, there is definitely an aspect of the left that again, I don't even want to call it the left. To me, it's not the left. There's a lot of the so-called woke scolding and that kind of BS that goes on. That's from liberals. That's from people that backed Hillary Clinton simply because she would be the first female president and no other reason. People that are actually on the left care about the issues, care about fighting for politicians that are going to fight for you. That's why the actual left backed Bernie Sanders. It wasn't because he was an old white man and we need more old white men in power. It's because he was the only person that was backing the issues that would actually help the average individual. When it comes to cancel culture, though, you have to, this is the way I've discussed it. So I covered that Barry Weiss. I have a much deeper dive on cancel culture and the Barry Weiss thing, the Harper's letter that he mentioned there in a different video. I'll link to that above later when I cut this out. But the left has been canceled for decades. Decades. Find me the cable news host who's a socialist, an actual socialist, or a Marxist, someone who's critical of capitalism, somebody who wants to move away from capitalism. Find me that cable news host. Where are they? They don't exist. Where's Noam Chomsky? The most discussed, propped up figure on the left, intellectual on the left, Noam Chomsky, he's not allowed on cable news. That's how afraid of his ideas cable news is, because Noam Chomsky showcases how media brainwashes people. So they don't want to have him on. Where are these actual left-wing shows? They don't exist. You had Phil Donahue. His show got canceled on MSNBC when he came out against the Iraq War. That's an actual canceling. They ended his show because he was against the Iraq War. By the way, you know who was for the Iraq War? Ben Shapiro. This is a guy that people listen to, get advice from, think he knows what he's talking about. He's been wrong about everything. It is truly, and not even just, by the way, to go back to the canceling thing, not even just Phil Donahue. Others lost their show. How many voices were actually allowed on television back during the Iraq War? There was Janine Garofalo, a comedian, was allowed on Fox News to be anti-Iraq War, but they never had anybody else on because they just brought on Janine Garofalo to act like, oh, look, only a comedian is against the Iraq War. And they made fun of her for being against the Iraq War. That's how skewed the coverage has been. And it wasn't just the Iraq War, it continues today. Any discussion around foreign policy is always heavily skewed towards neocons. Always. Yet somehow, cancel culture. Oh, cancel culture is a big issue on the left. They keep canceling the right. We're all getting canceled. Who the fuck's getting canceled? You're on television, Ben Shapiro. This guy's on Fox News all the time. Who the fuck's being canceled? Dave Rubin, again, a guy who talks all about cancel culture. On television, on Fox News all the time. How canceled are you really if you're on television? If you're on national media, on a national platform? These people are just complete jokes. Total jokes. It is... I mean, I feel like it's gotten to a point where I don't have to cover this to educate people. I just have to cover this for entertainment purposes, because you should all know this by now. All of their bullshit is easily debunked. Easily debunked. This doesn't take any work. You just have to watch their clips. They don't back up what they say. They don't have anything to back up what they say. Again, the Nancy Pelosi being radical left, that is such a ridiculous idea that he couldn't bring up any examples. So yeah, I may be covering more of this, more of these appearances in the future. Again, not really to educate, mostly to entertain. I do find these people entertaining in the sense that they are just completely ridiculous.